Hello, and you're very welcome to episode 80 of The Fifth Court, a podcast on legal affairs presented by myself, Peter Leonard, barrister and mediator.
Myself, Mark Tottenham, barrister and trusted state practitioner.
Mark, 80 episodes.
Absolutely,
Wow, can you believe it? Wow, there you go. From little acorns do great oaks grow. I think we're doing great. Well, we got...
just a lot of acorns.
A lot of acorns, maybe. Yeah, we got a terrific reaction to our interview with Mema Byrne, our colleague from the Law Library, who came in last week to tell us about the second edition of her book on landlord and tenant law. And people enjoyed that aspect of the interview. But I think the bit that got everybody going was her backstory and just the way she told it.
Yeah, she was very, just really interesting and quite entertaining on just her background and her lack of love for her previous career and how she really felt that she'd fallen on her feet coming into law.
Yeah, just really, really wonderful, kind of natural. I mean, I got texts from people I don't normally get texts from. I was like the rhinestone cowboy. But anyway, no, well done to Mema. Really, really good interview. Well, tonight we bring you the first of two interviews that we recorded at the recent Dublin Tech Summit. Now, at this one, I caught up with AI Wunderkind, Berlin-based Leif-Nissen Lundbäk, and he's been identified by Forbes magazine, no less, as one of the 30 under 30 to watch in Germany. So serious geezer, Mark. Leif has, in association with Germany's largest commercial legal firm, CMS, developed a cutting-edge legal AI system. So he's right at the forefront of this. So we talked all things AI and the legal world and how it's going to work in the legal world in a fascinating interview, which took place in the beautiful library in the RDS. Mark, you've probably been there, have you?
I think I have been in there.
Yeah, what a lovely environment. And we had a chat there about all things modern with all these things ancient around us, which was lovely. And folks, if you hear a couple of bangs on the door, that was because we kind of went on a bit longer than we should have. So people were trying to get into it. But I think that's going to be a really interesting interview. But first, we're going to look at three cases from the Decisis website, Mark, that you have identified. And we start with a personal injuries case. In this case, a wedding guest slipped on and fell on a wet dance floor. I'd say that's happened many times in Ireland over the years. And sadly, she suffered serious and permanent injuries. Oh, okay. This is the case of Sweeney versus Atlantic Troy Limited. And it went all the way to the Court of Appeal, this one. And Mr. Justice Seamus Noonan was the presiding judge.
Yeah, so it's as you say, a wedding guest who was on the dance floor. She had been wearing high heels, but changed into flip-flops when she went to the dance floor. And she slipped and suffered a permanent injury to her ankle or shin, I think it was. Anyway, it was quite serious. It had to be kind of have a bolt put into it. It was a nasty injury. And really the issue was whether the hotel was negligent. And they tried to suggest that she was responsible for her own injury, arguing that she had drunk alcohol, which isn't a great surprise. And the quotation that I think will probably come up again and again is, "The mere fact of having a few drinks is not evidence of negligence. As I've already noted, the plaintiff appears to have consumed in or around 2 litres of beer over the course of a 9-hour period during which she had one substantial meal and a subsequent lighter meal. That, without more, could not conceivably amount to evidence of intoxication to such a degree as to be incapable of taking regard for her own safety." So the Court of Appeal upheld the High Court's judgment.
Which was what?
Which was to find the hotel liable.
And she got a few bob.
She got a substantial
We don't know
award.
what record was playing when she slipped, do we? Okay,
all right. I think it comes up now.
All right, next to banking law. And in this case, a bank had lent money to a couple in reliance on the husband's income. So I suppose he was the money bags in the relationship. But unusually, I would have thought, Mark, but you can explain this to me better, they only had an agreement with the wife, but the account was in both names and the bank pursued the husband for repayment. In the absence of a contractual liability, they sought to rely on the doctrine of unjust enrichment. Okay, a lot in this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is a case, it as you say, it does seem very unusual, but it appears that the wife did all of the negotiating with the bank, went to the meetings with the bank and arranged this mortgage. And for whatever reason, the bank didn't, either through inadvertence or whatever, didn't get the husband to sign the documents, even though they were relying on his income. But the account was in both names. Now, when they came to pursue the loan, the husband obviously was saying, well, I'm not contractually liable. And they said, well, even if you're not contractually liable, you have had the benefit of this money. You knew you were getting the money from the bank, and therefore you are responsible. And I think, I'm just looking for the quotation, it says, "It follows, therefore, that affording the bank a claim in unjust enrichment against Mr. Murray does not undermine the way in which the parties choose to allocate the risks involved in the transaction, and that such remedy is not precluded by the so-called rule against leapfrogging," which is where you go against the person who wasn't the contractual partner. So anyway, the husband
he had to pay up.
He had to pay up.
He had to pay up. Yeah. Okay. And that is the case of Bank of Ireland Mortgage Bank versus Murray and another. And it's a decision from the Court of Appeal again. And Mr. Justice Donald Binchy was the presiding judge. So finally to a contractual dispute. And in this case, there was a dispute between an Irish company and a Dutch company concerning heat exchangers for use on poultry farms. Wow. So keep the chickens warm. And the question was, what terms applied to the contract? And this is the case of Biomass Heating Solutions Limited versus Gertz International BV. And again, a decision, Mr. Dennis MacDonald in the High Court.
Yes, so this is a preliminary issue concerning which law applied. But I think the really interesting part of this is the fact that the heat exchange system or heat exchanger formed an inherent part of systems supplied by the plaintiff to farmers for the purpose of converting untreated poultry manure into energy. So that's what they were importing these things.
Nothing is wasted, Mark. I'm glad.
Nothing is wasted in poultry farms. Exactly.
It's like if you cook a chicken, you stick the bones in a pot, don't you? And you make soup. So this is another version of that, is it?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the legal issue doesn't relate to the hen manure.
The hen manure. Okay, very good.
What the defendant here, which was Dutch company, was trying to argue was that the supplier's terms and conditions applied to the contract. But the only place in which there was reference to this was in the order confirmation, and there was a suggestion that the order confirmation hadn't even been received by the plaintiff. So therefore, they couldn't just say, right, the terms and conditions were those of the supplier. They had to look at the wider kind of implied terms of the contract. So
okay, really good. Okay, three great cases there, Mark. So back shortly with Leif-Nissen Lundbæk.
Clio, the most recommended cloud-based legal software used by 150,000 lawyers worldwide. Want to streamline case management, automate tasks including your client intake process and billing while supported by a team of people 24/5. Visit clio.com/IE.
Silence in the Fifth Court.
Okay, it is my great pleasure to welcome to the studio today Leif Lundbæk. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Leif?
Yeah, that's fine. Leif Lundbæk.
Okay, and we were having a little chat, and I was saying, because I know you're living in Berlin at the moment, which is, I think, the coolest city in the whole of Europe. Am I right?
Well, yeah, it's one of the really good cities, I would say, especially for tech. Yeah.
Yes, and for tech, okay. So it's kind of cutting edge in terms of tech, is it?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there's a lot of talent really moving there, living there, working there. I must say, since COVID, it really changed a bit because people really live everywhere now, and it's I think that's very positive, right? I mean, you can kind of found a business now from whatever village in, like we were just talking about Galway, right? I mean,
yes.
you can easily start a business in Galway.
So you lived in Galway for a little while?
Yeah, just a little while. And
what brought you to Galway?
Well, my grandparents, so they actually expanded their business, and they were, so they built aluminium factories, and so they're producing like parts for like airplanes and so on, and they built up a site in Galway. And
okay, and they're Danish, aren't they? So that's a Danish business based in Galway?
They're like, yeah, I mean, and exactly, and so that was quite interesting. And so I must admit, I haven't really that much memories of that time here, and I was just short time here, but I love really the nature. And
but what I loved about you, and I should tell our listeners, we are doing this interview at the Dublin Tech Summit, which is incredible. I've just literally arrived, and there's all these techie people running around, and this is very cutting edge in terms of technology. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But when I said to you where you're from, though you're based in Berlin and you're currently operating and your company operates out of Berlin, you described yourself as a European.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Okay, and why would you describe yourself as a European?
I don't know. I mean, like I don't really associate to one single country. And I mean, because I've been living in like Spain and spending a lot of time in the UK, I mean, it's not really part of the European Union anymore, unfortunately, but spent time in Ireland. My family is basically Danish. And now I've been living in Berlin now for 5 years. And I must admit, I mean, for me, it's just Europe as a whole is basically, it's like a mixture of cultures, of course, but there's, of course, a European identity. And I would love to have Europe grow even closer together rather than further apart, although these times right now, like it seems there is also a lot of movements to grow further apart.
Yes.
But I'm very much against that. I would rather have, in my opinion, like whatever United States of Europe. That's what I feel. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, very good. Okay. Now, as I said, we're at the Dublin Tech Summit, and you are an expert in AI. Now, you are dealing here with the uninitiated. Okay. So you're going to have to take it very slowly with me, Leif, in relation to this. But we know that AI is taking over the world and is kind of permeating into all areas these days. And obviously, we're a legal podcast, and the law is very much trying to embrace AI.
Yeah.
I notice amongst many Irish legal firms, especially the bigger ones, AI and lectures in relation to AI and the role AI can play in providing legal services is huge. So if we can talk about that a little bit, okay?
Yes.
But before we do that, just talk to me about your company and AI and where you are in the AI universe.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, it's funny that we talk about law because we actually are an AI company in law. And so we created Noxtra, a pure legal large language model, funnily also called LLM, like the professional degree.
Yes.
So don't get mixed up in that. So we created a language model specifically designed and trained on legal data to serve as an assistant to lawyers. And I know it can be like, I mean, I often get asked, like, will it replace lawyers? What about the billable hour and these kind of things, right? And that's very interesting questions. But we designed this fundamentally as a helper for lawyers in particular, whether it's in law firms or in, well, I mean, legal departments of corporates, to work, well, I mean, faster, of course, right? Have more output, but also to increase the credibility and also the quality, really, and accountability.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of different factors that it addresses.
Okay, that's obviously hugely interesting and hugely interesting to our listeners.
Yeah.
Just before we get to that point,
Yes.
will you talk to me about AI?
Yeah.
For sort of old-fashioned geezers like myself, who are kind of nervous about AI and don't really understand it.
Should be.
Is it a good thing?
Depends.
Is it something to be concerned about? Yeah.
Depends. I mean, like, to be honest, I mean, like, there's a lot of people running around totally concerned. There's a lot of people running around saying like, oh no, it's all a bright future and there shouldn't be anything to be concerned of. I'm a bit in the middle. So I would say there's a lot of things to be concerned of, and we should be very, very much careful. And even though, I mean, I've been working in this bubble for 9 years, I've been starting actually Xayn as a spin-off at Oxford University, and so we rose really from research and are a very technical company really, and a lot of mathematicians and so on in there. And I'm myself shocked of how fast developments go, right?
Yes.
And if I'm shocked, then I don't know what, I mean, I think probably most people are not shocked because they don't know too much about it. But the thing is, the speed of things is really tremendous. And I think the problem will be that people won't be able to adapt fast enough. Because if you compare the speed of, let's take something completely different, like the first industrial revolution, right? And that felt really, really quick for people, but there was nothing against the speed that we see now, or the speed of the rising of the internet. There is nothing against the speed of like ChatGPT being introduced last year, and now we see models that outperform humans, right? I mean, like the average human IQ is 100, right? The IQ of GPT-4 is 160. Right, above 200, we can't even notice it anymore. Yes, it doesn't have emotions and these kind of things, but emotions, to be honest, are just like some kind of like evolutional things humans build up to kind of reproduce themselves and these kind of things. So it's not
So you're
something.
not saying that's what distinguishes us as humans?
Well, yeah. I mean, at the end, I think we are also just a bunch of algorithms that we have inside. We quickly decide on things by seeing it. We have a lot of probabilistic behavior inside. We quickly decide what is better for us. We just like call it feelings and these kind of things, but actually we calculate all the time. We just don't do it with numbers.
So you reckon it can all be broken down into mathematical formulas?
Well, yeah, plus a bit of evolutional biochemistry and so on. But at the end, yeah, I think AI can outperform humans to some extent, and in various things can also replace humans.
Okay, let's go back to the speed of the evolution. I previously went to a talk, and again, somebody like yourself who was an expert in AI made the point that, you know, he was anticipating that problems with AI would be for the next generation down the line. And then he said in the space of 18 months, the whole thing has just taken off, and it has progressed so quickly. Yeah. So why is it progressing so quickly?
Well, it's like not really completely understood yet. I think it's a combination of money and the ability or kind of availability of computational resources that have increased, and some kind of companies with bold decisions to invest in that kind of computational power into it, and then it's data at the end. And the thing is, one very, very big caveat, though, and that kind of lets me sleep, is that our data out there is pretty bad. So like things like ChatGPT and so on, they're trained on like the internet data, and the internet data is horrible. I mean, like, for example, if you train something on Twitter, I mean, obviously you get like a complete racist bot out, right? So
yes.
So
just what people are putting out there.
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? So you have, so I think like it has progressed tremendously, but I think there will now be like a bit of a pause, I think, to some extent, because if you see, for example, the advances between GPT-3 and GPT-4, they were tremendous. Now the advances to GPT-4o are not big. It can't really do things better. It can do more stuff. It can now also process audio and images and all in one model. That's all fine, right? It becomes a bit more like a human in a way, but it's not more accurate, and that's the thing. So it's so the IQ basically, or AIQ, hasn't really risen that much, like a bit, right? But it's like it flattens, and that's I think mostly about data, because there's so much shit data out there that even though you throw more algorithms at it or more computational power, it doesn't really get better. Law is a bit of an exception, because law is a complete own world in a way. And in law, it's not about like being able to understand the whole world. It's basically the ability.
And hopefully the data in law is good. I mean, judicial precedents and legislation is pretty clear, isn't it?
I mean, like I wouldn't say good, but the problem is the problem there is like that humans made law, and humans are not really consistent every time. Like there is like you can see already our model like says that a lot of the legislation is actually just bad.
Okay. So obviously you're highly scientific and you have a mathematical background. So just tell me, where did your interest in law come from, and where did the law association with AI come from?
Well, actually, I wasn't interested in it, and it just got to me, rather the other side. So, because one of our partners, CMS, you may know them, like it's like the second largest law firm in Europe and largest in Germany, and so CMS Hasche Siegel. And they have 7,000 lawyers and like huge firm. And they were actually pretty bold and approached us and said like, well, okay, you have a model, you have like a model that is really, really efficient. Why not create a new model? And they approached us last year and said, we have a lot of data. We have legal expertise. You have the tech. Why not bring both together? Because they can't create a model because they lack of the tech. we can't create a legal model because we are not a legal professional people, and we don't have the data. So we put actually both together and created, I think, something really wonderful with it, because we actually got so much data that we were able to train a legal model that is purely designed for understanding legal context, working with contracts, working with law, working with legislation, making it understandable, trying to reason on it, trying to make lawyers faster. So we created a whole tool, Noxtra, and a model around it, which is now like an assistant to lawyers, and especially with a focus on Europe, so European countries.
And I'm going to come back to the specifics of that, because that is fascinating, Leif. But why did this huge firm in Germany want this? Why did they feel this was necessary?
So there's very interesting interviews also with them where they were saying, well, I mean, when ChatGPT came out, there was the first night that one of the partners there wasn't able to sleep, because he knew that this would change his profession dramatically. And so they immediately, so they reacted really fast, and they immediately saw their profession will change. The billable hour will change. There is like, if they don't do something at the end, they will be eaten. Right?
So they need to get ahead of the curve.
They need to use what they have. Right now, what do they have? They have expertise and they have data. And they have to use that in order to create something that actually makes them more productive, makes them work better and faster. Otherwise, there will some company, whatever company that is, come and just say, here, there's a robo-lawyer, and you don't need humans anymore, just to exaggerate, right? I mean, I don't think that this is going to happen, but still. So they said, like, they want to be like ahead of the tool chain, or not just be like someone who just at some point uses it.
Okay, so it was very much innovation from their point of view. This is happening. Yes. Let's move with the times. Yes. Let's wake up and see what's happening and be part of it and try and get ahead of things. Okay, so let's come back to stuff like billable hours and you know, whether that makes law firms more efficient, etc. But before we go to that, when you talk to me about the model, how does it assist a law firm in the course of their duties in the work that they carry out?
Yeah. So, I mean, the model itself is of course just a model, but we had to build, of course, like a whole tool chain around it. So like basically build like a co-pilot for law around it, where you can upload contracts, you can ask it questions, you can upload multiple contracts, compare them, see whether, for example, let's say you have like whatever, even simple things like a DPA, you know, okay, there's certain things that need to be fulfilled. You just ask it, is the DPA fulfilling basically all of the criteria of GDPR? And then the model would be analyzing the DPA in milliseconds and create you a whole report and saying, well, those are the points that it fulfills, those not. Let's say you have like whatever license contract, you can upload this, you can upload your template, you can ask the model, how does it deviate? Is it fulfilling my standard criteria of my corporate standards, right? So it can all do that within milliseconds. You can create translations, summaries, you can create new contracts. You don't have to start from scratch, right? So from a empty piece of paper, you can just ask it, okay, create me, so that this is my case, create me a contract. Or, for example, what I also see a lot is like you can upload your whole whatever email chain of whatever you have, like in a litigation case with someone, everything that was around it, and ask it to prepare whatever a case for you, point you out where there's inconsistencies, and so on and so on. So there's a lot of use cases, really, right? And
this is fascinating. This is absolutely fascinating, Leif. Okay, and just in terms of you doing your work, so did you liaise with lawyers? Did you sit down with them? Did they say, this is what we need to do, this is what would be of assistance to us? Or did you just say, look, AI, let it take it in whatever direction it will go?
No, it's very tedious work. So it's I must say, like after some months in the beginning, I was starting to dream of clauses, and I mean, I actually couldn't sleep because of clauses. But in the beginning, I mean, for us, I mean, it was also a very, very difficult decision for us because we were like very general. I mean, we were focusing on very compliance and privacy sensitive topics with our model. So that's like where we were focusing on. And we then just like fed in the model with the first bunch of legal data and then see what comes out. And the results were absolutely amazing, so that we actually then had a board meeting and we said like, okay, well, I mean, there's an amazing opportunity here before us, but we can either redo it completely with all our resources or not at all, right? And then we made the decision to really focus everything, all of our resources, the entire team, all the money on that case, so that was quite interesting. And then in the beginning of the development, it was really a lot of back and forth. So we had to understand very clearly, okay, what are the results? How does the data need to look like? And so there was really tiny steps in the beginning, and then only really in the end you see a massive growth in capabilities. But the beginning was really to drill it down on like, okay, what are the use cases? What are the cases that it has to understand? And how does the data on CMS side need to look like? How do they need to change their data so that the AI can actually learn from it? So there was a lot of back and forth and compromises really, because lawyers, I mean, ideally, of course, we would like to have like a so-called ultra chat data structure all perfectly designed in JSON. But if I tell you that, I mean, you would say, well, what does that mean, right?
Yes.
So we had to do some compromises, and then at the end, they provided us the data in Excel files with huge matrices where they try to pin down clauses and evaluate clauses. And we then build basically a tool where we take all of this data and transform it into a format that is understandable for the AI to learn.
Okay. And in terms of, obviously you worked very closely with this huge legal firm in Germany, but you're developing this independently. This is your product, isn't it? It's not owned by them jointly, is it?
Yes, at the end, yes. It was of course a lot of negotiations. I must admit, because like obviously, I mean, like negotiating with a law firm, I mean, it's great. I mean, not really, because obviously, I mean, like they do negotiations for a life.
So you needed an independent lawyer to assist you with that.
Yeah, to some extent, yes.
Okay.
But to be honest, we were really, really, really lucky that they understood, and they were very visionary. They were understanding. We had especially one partner on their side that understood. It won't fly if they do that.
Okay.
So they knew the IP has to lie on our side. But we have, of course, very close associations, and they are also part on the equity side. So they really profit on the equity story as well.
Okay. But I suppose the point is this the service, this AI service, and legal with a specific legal tinge that you provide, is that generally applicable?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
we have,
and are other firms reaching out to you now?
Well, by now we have actually multiple law firms that provide also data that work with us. So it's not only one anymore; it's multiple ones, and we have now integrated into more than 50 legal departments, mostly large firms, like really, really large firms, banks, and so on in Germany.
So this is a revolution, really, in terms of legal firms.
I mean, we have been
mainly in Germany or across Europe generally.
So we started in Germany. So right now it's still like mainly Germany, but also starting other countries now, and even US. So even I can't disclose which one, but we're also starting to partner with a huge US law firm that also wants to bring it to the US market, and they also very much value the kind of privacy and compliance that we have inbuilt. And so yeah.
Okay, so just picking up from our conversation there, Leif, you're talking about obvious things like GDPR or licensing agreements or whatever. Obviously, the code of law that applies in Germany is kind of the civil code that applies generally in Europe.
Yes.
It's very different to the common law that applies here in Ireland or in Britain. And I know you spent some time in Oxford University. Is your service equally applicable here? Does it do the same work? Would it suit an Irish firm? Would it suit...
Yeah. It would very much suit also these firms here because we train also on more and more jurisdictions, and we saw that it's actually better to train one model with more data on also more jurisdictions rather than to have individual models for individual jurisdictions. But what is important is that you really, of course, train on this data, you understand the jurisdiction, and so that works generally quite well. I would say it works generally. I mean, both have pros and cons, really, right? So, of course, if you have a lot of cases, you can find a similar case. You can really drill it down to those cases. And for legal systems like in Germany, France, Italy, or so, of course, there's a lot of interpretation, but they also work with cases, right? I mean, they also look at whatever other cases have happened in the past, right? And court decisions, court cases are equally important.
Okay.
Therefore.
So it is applicable.
I think it is applicable. You have to understand, of course, a bit like the individual legal systems. You have to train really well on those, and then it should work.
But it can be adapted to any legal system.
Yeah.
And
we also do that step by step, right? I mean,
okay. And have you any contact from Irish firms?
Not so far, no.
Okay. Well, that could all change. Leif.
Yeah,
that could all
I hope
change.
so.
Obviously, and I know you come from a scientific background, but it's clear you've been hanging around with lawyers for a while because you use that phrase, the billable hour, which is very popular with lawyers.
Depends on.
Yeah, it depends on. I'm just wondering, like, where does the lawyer stand in all of this? You know, if you can press a button and you can get huge amounts of data that previously people had to go and look up and research, etc.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me about all of that. Is the lawyer becoming redundant as a result?
No, I don't think so at all, right? I mean, there's there's a few factors, right? First of all, regulation is increasing a lot, so there's a lot more work actually, and I think in general the whole sector increases through that. So there will be a lot more things that can be handled, but I think the individual output, let's put it to a word, right? So let's say the cost per word will shrink. Because words are basically one of the things that you provide as an output, right? I mean, I know it sounds maybe stupid to drill it down to just a word, but I think it's a good thing because even with email and Microsoft Word, like the big innovations that have happened in the legal industry, well, I mean, what was the impact of those? The cost per word eventually shrank because, like, if you have to write down everything on paper, of course you're slower. And now with AI, I think it's a big evolution, big revolution. So the output, so the cost per output will shrink, but you will be able to produce more output. And you will be able to do things faster. But really what stays, and I think what will be much more important in the future even, is the human touch, is the human factor.
Yes,
which
and we're
is
going
trust.
to talk about that. Yeah, absolutely.
It's trust. You at the end, I mean, of course, maybe you won't do like things like check me the NDA or whatever, right? I mean, like maybe that's something you quickly do in a second, right? But when it comes to complex cases, creative cases where you really need a lot of trust and a lot of like intermediation, if that word exists, I don't know. Then
interaction and
interaction
stuff like that,
and so on between different parties.
Negotiation skills will always
negotiation. Then that's I think the factor where the lawyer will stay and increasingly be valuable. And of course, just like sitting down and producing words. Well, I think that's a side that will become a side factor.
And let's go back to your German partner, this huge firm, CUS, was that? CMS in Germany. I mean, you talked about them having 700 lawyers.
7,000.
7,000 lawyers. Yeah. Okay, 7,000 lawyers. After their dealings with you, do they still have 7,000 lawyers, or are they going to their board of management and saying we need a mass redundancy plan here because we don't need these people anymore?
That's a very tricky question. Well, I mean, they I think still have 7,000 lawyers and probably even more. But the thing is, I think there's a lot of new business that's coming. So even with us, they produce new business because, for example, like we work a lot with legal departments. Actually, 2/3 of our customers are legal departments, not law firms. And very interesting factor because legal departments are having like an even bigger need to automate. And the thing is, they need consultancy of how to automate and understand. So they need someone that understands the AI and the law, right? And this is, I think, a very, very big coming factor where they need these kind of services of them. And also,
and just in terms of, let's say, the supervision of lawyers. I mean, as you say, you can press a button, these wonderful computers can deliver this information. AI can, for example, in a GDPR request, can get the information very quickly. It can get comparative contractual agreements, etc., very quickly.
Yeah.
But you will still need the supervision of a lawyer to go through it and approve it and, you know, spot the weaknesses.
And that's how...
how do we know this is perfect?
That's how it will change. Like, I think it will change from, like, what we know of, like, a series like Suits or so, where, I don't know, like, they were in some basement trying to read through thousands of pages in whatever, a couple of days and do nothing else. And that, I think that will change. People will have to train on future lawyers and young lawyers. They will have to train to spot mistakes and spot what the AI does and look into the right things, look up and check the right things rather than check everything, but spend much more time on understanding what the AI did. And I think that's how it will change.
Okay, this has been absolutely fascinating and slightly reassuring, because you're saying that the impediment at the moment is currently data.
Yeah.
The AI can't go anywhere beyond the level of data that's available at the moment. You used a very interesting phrase earlier, Leif. You talked about a robo-lawyer. I've heard that phrase before. I mean, is that going to happen? Are there going to be people getting up in court like me and robots addressing judges, etc.? That's never going to happen. Reassure me.
No, I can't reassure you that. I think it probably will happen at some point to a certain degree. Not maybe in every country. I mean, like, it depends very much on how the legal system will allow that. But I'm pretty sure in, like, some countries, maybe even in Asia also, there will be, at least to a certain degree, right? I mean, not that there's a robot sitting as a judge or something, maybe not, right? But I would say never, right? I don't know. But the degree of automation and robo-lawyer assistant might of course increase a lot. I mean, really, never say never, right?
Okay.
I can't promise that.
So it's a brave new world. And it's a lot different to the brave new world that Aldous Huxley was talking about all those years ago. And as you said, the revolution in AI in the space of 18 months has been extraordinary. Yeah. But you reckon it's peaked now and it's going to settle down a little bit?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say peak, but I mean, I would say like that the increase might not be as, I mean, like let's say in the next 18 months, if it would continue like that in the next 18 months, we would have, that would mean basically a threat to humanity. And I don't think that this is going to happen.
Okay. Leif, this has been absolutely fantastic. Can I thank you hugely for being a guest on the Fifth Court? I know our listeners will be really, really interested in what you have to say, and it's been really fascinating. We have a question that we ask all our guests. I haven't prepared you for this, so if you don't know, that's okay. But is there any book that, in relation to this AI law, anything like that, that you would recommend to our listeners, or something that you think maybe people might find interesting?
That's a very tricky question, because it's like something that is like so new. I mean,
or any legal book in general that you find interesting.
To be honest, I don't think that like these kind of technical books also are very, very helpful in that regard. I find actually generally like history books pretty interesting, and because for me it's not like about like this kind of factual things of like saying, okay, this is how tech can solve this, and this is how like law XYZ is like handling things, because there's all different in different countries and so on. But I think the role of like how humans adopt and live with that is actually much more interesting. So I think we can learn a lot from history, and I think it's like, how can you prepare for these kind of revolutions? So I would really recommend to kind of focus on these kind of things, like, for example, the Industrial Revolution and what happened there. And there were like huge society, the impact on society was really huge, right? Because we came from a peasant kind of society to industrial society. And of course there were like people, I don't know, like bombing factories and whatnot, right? And and I think we should really carefully read up what happened there and how we can and to prevent mistakes, right? And to prevent things from happening again.
Yeah, well, that's more my thing, looking back rather than looking forward. Like you.
No,
like
but it's AI looks back in order to look forward.
Yes,
AI doesn't do anything else, right? I mean, it's just like looking at probabilities of based on what happened.
Okay, I see they're knocking on the door. We have to give up this beautiful room that we've been given here in the RDS for this interview. Leif-Nissen Lundbæk, this has been a really interesting interview, and thank you so much for being a guest on the Fifth Court.
Thanks for having me.
The Fifth Court will adjourn until next week.
So that's all from this edition of the Fifth Court. We hope you have enjoyed it. A huge thank you to Leif-Nissen Lundbæk. Did you enjoy that, Mark?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you weren't there with me, but anyway, there you go.
Well, I think you handled it masterfully on your own.
As the man said, I did my best. But anyway,
extremely well. But I think we are clearly going into a brave new world when it comes to AI.
What do you think about the robo-lawyer pushing it out of the court, Mark? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I can't help thinking, I mean, there's no doubt that there are effectively online algorithms that are resolving disputes. I mean, Amazon has had one for a long time. A lot of other, there are ways that disputes can be resolved. However, when you've got a legal problem, a little bit like going to the doctor, you kind of want to have the flesh and blood person with you who's going to explain things, answer your questions. And I think it's going to be a long time before people just say, right, I'm prepared to press a button and let an algorithm do my negotiation for me.
Wow, okay, so they really want that. They don't want things to go on for 5 years in delay and all that sort of stuff. No, I agree with you. I'm with you 100% in relation to that. Look, a great interview, and we're very grateful to Leif-Nissen Lundbæk for making himself available. But before we go, I would like to say a big thank you to our producer, Conal O'Morine, and to Alison O'Dwyer of the Dublin South Podcast Studios for her wonderful work in recording this show. Thank you, Alison. So from me, Peter Leonard.
And myself, Mark Tottenham.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon in the Fifth Court.